Okay, let's do the room. Will you hold my power source?
You could see the realization in her face also when she realized.
Yeah, I know. That's what, and my thought, like, do I keep on going even though I forgot to show my cards? Okay. Top, bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Top, bottom, messy desk. 2 people. Okay. 111,355 people died. Let me put that into a better perspective. 111,355 people died in a 1-year span. You probably think I'm talking about a war, but I'm talking about how many people in the U.S. alone died from a drug overdose from April 2022 to April 2023. I, Megan Hagen-Pond, had a drug addiction. I, Megan Hagen-Pond, recovered. The information I'm about to give you is not only scientific fact, but it's also my own personal perspective. On that note, let's dive into the causes of drug addiction, why drug addiction is hard to beat, and how people do recover. Drug addiction is not a one-size-fits-all. There's a lot of different factors that come into play. Elements including psychological, cultural, social, and biological. However, research says that mostly a person becomes addicted due to what happens in their personal life and how they view themselves personally. Let's break down these elements so we have a better understanding of how they work. Example of psychological factor is trauma. Studies show that 59% of people with post-traumatic stress disorder develop a drug addiction. Trauma before the age of 11 increases that factor even more. And the more traumatic experience a person has at a young age, it increases it. Now, not all trauma is preventable, such as major illness, natural disaster, and automobile accidents. Another factor is social and cultural, which we can put together in socio-cultural. That is where people want to create their own sense of community with other drug users because the general public is going to judge them for what they do. This creates their own drug culture. This solidarity of this group gives them a sense of belonging, which is probably something they've never had before due to the psychological factors that we just talked about. Biological factors include genetics and physiology. Example, some people prefer depressants and some people prefer stimulants. This has to do with brain chemistry. I myself, opioids made me sick to my stomach, where stimulants made me, unfortunately, feel like I could conquer the world. This brings us to brain function. The first time somebody uses, they do not become mentally addicted immediately. But however, by using it creates a way for them to withdraw from those psychological factors, and that is why they want to repeat the use, because they finally feel normal again, but in a not so good way. This is what creates continual use. And continual use changes the frontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the reward pathway in the brain. This is why it's hard to quit. The reward system or reward pathway encourages things that people need in survival, like eating and helping each other out, along with learning things. This is why we enjoy learning new things, because the chemicals in our brain called neurotransmitters increase while we're doing these activities. That's what makes these tasks enjoyable. Now, drugs can impersonate neurotransmitters because they are both chemicals. Repeated uses is going to change your chemical balance in your brain, which is why people become dependent. Without the drug, the brain does not have or produce enough chemical to make itself even just feel okay on a normal day without the drug. This is why withdrawal makes people so sick physically and emotionally, and why it's so hard to quit. So, how does this vicious cycle end? That's where recovery comes in. Recovery is a scientific method that helps people stop using drugs. Now, there are prescribed drugs that help alleviate withdrawals. However, those are only meant to be used temporarily to help people get through the detoxification process. Another way through recovery is behavioral therapy. This gives people the power to handle stress and triggers to not use again. We've all probably heard of the 12-step program. That's a form of behavioral therapy where there's a social support system and people meet with their peers. They focus on acceptance, surrender, and active involvement. Another behavioral therapy is family therapy, where not only the patient goes, but their whole family, and it's more like a group therapy. Motivational enhancement therapy focuses on trying to get the patient to want to change their behavior. Contingency management is a reward system for staying sober and attending therapies. And lastly, we have cognitive behavior therapy, which gives people the tools to cope, identify, and avoid situations that lead them to do drugs. So now that we know the cause of drug addiction, why drug addiction is hard to beat, and how people do recover. By knowing what drug addiction is, we understand why people use drugs. By knowing why it's hard to quit, we better have an understanding of the drug user. And by knowing what recovery it is, we now know that there is hope for those people to get sober. Last year, we lost more U.S. citizens to drugs than we did in the Vietnam War. Thank you.
You guys have your cards again?
I do gotta show my cards again. And the
was literally saying something about you.
Wow.
there's them shoe.
No, it's okay.
Who was up there?
That's his daughter. One of his daughters.
And then he has an older one.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Guys, that's so It's not, they're getting oranger by the minute. Not good.
You're coming to work like an Oompa Loompa.
I know. I think I put some on my face. It wasn't supposed to be that crazy. This is just a little, like, tube, like, eyedropper tube.
Really?
Oh my god. 6 drops.
Very concentrated.
That was the last one. Was the first one. Thanks, bye.